You've just been in a car accident in Maryland. You walk away thinking you're fine. No pain, no obvious injuries. But the truth is, seeing a doctor immediately after the accident could be the difference between making a full recovery and living with chronic pain. And if you wait, you're not just risking your health, you are giving the insurance company exactly what they need to question your entire claim. Hi, I'm attorney Bobby Zirkin. I've been a lawyer for over 25 years, and I was a member of the Maryland State Senate, Maryland House of Delegates. If you've been in a car accident in Maryland, the most important decision that you will make isn't about insurance companies or even lawyers. It's about your health. Here's what I tell every client who walks into my office. Get medical attention immediately, even if you feel fine. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but let me explain why this could be the difference between a full recovery and years of pain, and why it's absolutely critical for any potential legal case that you may have. Your body produces adrenaline after a traumatic event like a car accident or a dog bite. This natural response can mask pain and injuries for hours, sometimes even days or weeks. I've seen clients who walked away from accidents feeling perfectly fine, only to wake up the next morning unable to move their neck or tremendous pain in their back. More importantly, I've seen insurance companies use any delay in treatment as ammunition to argue that injuries weren't related to the accident. Don't give them that opportunity. Why immediate medical care protects your legal rights? Under Maryland law and under a doctrine called proximate cause, there must be a clear connection between the accident and your injuries. The longer you wait to seek treatment, the harder it becomes to establish this important connection. Insurance companies have teams of lawyers whose job it is to find reasons to deny your claim, and a gap in treatment is like handing them a roadmap to do exactly that. I had a case where my client, Sarah, was rear-ended at a traffic light. She felt a little sore, but decided to go home and rest. A week later, when the pain became unbearable, she finally went to the emergency room. The insurance company spent months arguing that her herniated disc could have happened anywhere during that week or even before. We won the case, but it required extensive medical testimony and expert witnesses that could have been avoided if she had just simply sought immediate treatment after the accident. Maryland follows a contributory negligence standard, which is already harsh enough without giving the other side additional ammunition. Under Maryland Code Courts and Judicial Proceedings Article Section 11-108, you have 3 years to file a personal injury lawsuit, but the strength of your case can be undermined from day one if you don't establish proper medical documentation immediately. What counts as immediate medical attention? When I say immediate, I don't necessarily mean racing to the emergency room if you're not seriously injured, but you should seek some form of medical evaluation within 24 hours. This could be your primary care physician, urgent care center, or the emergency room if your injury is warranted. The key is getting documentation. Every medical professional who examines you creates a record. That record becomes evidence. It timestamps your complaints, documents your symptoms, and importantly establishes that causal relationship between the accident and the injuries that insurance companies love to challenge. I always tell clients to be completely honest with medical providers about every symptom, even if it seems minor, and be thorough. That slight headache might be the early sign of a concussion. That minor back stiffness could develop into a more serious spinal issue. Medical professionals are trained to spot these potential problems, but they can only help and they can only document if you're truthful and open about what you're experiencing. The hidden injuries that require professional evaluation. Car accidents create forces on your body that can cause injuries you might not immediately recognize. Whiplash is the most common example, the one people know about. The rapid back and forth motion of your head and neck can stretch and tear soft tissues, but symptoms might not appear for hours or even days. Concussions are another serious concern that's often overlooked. You don't need to hit your head or lose consciousness to suffer a traumatic brain injury. The sudden deceleration in a car accident can cause your brain to impact the inside of your skull. Symptoms like difficulty concentrating, memory problems, or changes in mood can appear days later, but by then, establishing the connection to your accident becomes much more difficult. Internal injuries are perhaps the scariest because they can be life-threatening, and completely invisible to you initially. The seatbelt that saved your life can also cause internal bruising or bleeding. Only medical imaging and professional examination can rule out these serious conditions. I represented a client who was hit by a drunk driver. He walked away from the scene, declined the ambulance, and went home. 2 days later, he collapsed at work from internal bleeding caused by a ruptured spleen. The emergency surgery saved his life, but those 2 days of delay allowed the insurance company to question whether the injury was really from the accident or from something else entirely. It was a little bit ridiculous, and of course we won that case, but the insurance company used it as a way to delay and to question. How medical documentation builds your case. Every piece of medical documentation serves a purpose in building your legal case. The initial emergency room or doctor's visit establishes baseline injuries and symptoms right from the onset. Follow-up appointments show the progression and severity of your injuries. Treatment records demonstrate the impact on your daily life and the necessity of medical intervention. Physical therapy records are particularly valuable because they document your limitations and progress over a period of time. Insurance companies often try to argue that injuries should have healed faster or weren't as severe as you claimed. Detailed physical therapy notes showing specific limitations, pain levels, and functional improvements provide objective evidence of your injury's true impact. Under Maryland's collateral source rule, the fact that your insurance paid for medical treatment, like we just discussed, doesn't reduce the amount the at-fault party owes to you. This means every doctor's visit, every test, every therapy session becomes part of your recoverable damages, but only if they are properly documented and clearly connected to the accident through immediate and consistent medical care. The insurance company playbook against delayed treatment. Insurance companies have standard strategies they use when someone delays seeking medical treatment. They will argue that if you were really injured, you would have gone to the doctor immediately. They'll suggest that any injuries that appeared later were pre-existing conditions or caused by something unrelated to the accident. If you miss appointments, they will use that as well. I've seen insurance adjusters comb through medical records looking for any mention of back pain, headaches, or neck stiffness from years before an accident. They will try to argue that current symptoms are just a flare-up of an old condition rather than the new injuries from the crash. Immediate medical attention helps establish a clear timeline that makes this argument much harder to sustain. They will question your credibility. If you're claiming significant injuries but didn't seek immediate treatment, they'll paint you as someone who's exaggerating symptoms for financial gain. This is particularly damaging if your case goes to trial, where jury perception matters enormously. When the emergency room isn't necessary. Not every accident requires a trip to the ER, and I don't want to create unnecessary panic. If you're not experiencing pain, obvious injuries, or symptoms like dizziness, nausea, or confusion, you might be fine visiting your primary care doctor or an urgent care center instead. I can't gauge that sitting here having this conversation with you. But certain symptoms always warrant immediate emergency care. Loss of consciousness, even briefly, severe headache, neck or back pain, numbness or tingling in the arms or legs, difficulty concentrating or remembering things, nausea or vomiting, or any visible injuries like cuts, bruises, or swelling. The emergency room visit creates the strongest possible documentation because it demonstrates that you took your symptoms seriously enough to seek immediate and urgent care. But any medical evaluation within 24 to 48 hours will serve the legal purpose of establishing causation and documenting your injuries, whether or not you go to an emergency room. Following through on treatment recommendations. Getting that initial medical evaluation is just the first step. Following through on all recommended treatment by your physician is equally important for both your health and for your legal case. If a doctor recommends physical therapy, follow-up appointments, or specialist consultations, comply with all of these recommendations and do it completely. Insurance companies scrutinize treatment compliance carefully. If you miss appointments or don't follow through on recommended care, they will argue that your injuries weren't as serious as you claim. They might even argue that your failure to follow medical advice contributed to the severity of your ongoing symptoms. I always advise clients to keep detailed records of every appointment, every treatment session, and how they're feeling day to day. This personal documentation combined with the medical records creates a comprehensive picture of how the accident affected your life. Building trust through transparency. Throughout this process, complete honesty and openness is essential. Be truthful with medical providers about your symptoms, your pain levels, and how injuries are affecting your daily activities. Don't exaggerate, but don't minimize either. Medical professionals need accurate information to provide proper care, and insurance companies will scrutinize any inconsistencies in your statements. If you had pre-existing conditions, disclose them. Hiding medical history almost always backfires when insurance companies obtain your complete medical records and your history. It's better to be upfront and let your attorney handle how pre-existing conditions relate to new injuries from the accident. Maryland case law, particularly in Fry versus Yackley, established that pre-existing conditions don't prevent recovery if the accident aggravated or worsened those conditions. But this protection only works if you are open and honest about your medical history from the beginning. What you've learned and what's next. You now understand why immediate medical attention after a car accident isn't just about your health, though that's certainly the most important factor. It's about protecting your legal rights as well, establishing clear documentation of your injuries, and preventing insurance companies from using delay tactics against you. The bottom line is simple. See a medical professional within 24 hours of car accident. Be completely honest about your symptoms. Follow through on all recommended treatment and keep detailed records of absolutely everything. That's exactly what I'm covering in my next video, how to know if an injury case will go to trial in Maryland. I'll reveal the specific factors that predict whether your case will settle out of court or require a jury trial, including the warning signs that litigation is inevitable and how that knowledge affects your settlement strategy. Understanding whether your case is headed to trial isn't just about curiosity. It impacts everything from how long your case takes to how much preparation is required to maximize your compensation. This insider knowledge can help you make informed decisions about your case and set realistic expectations for the road ahead. Don't leave this to chance. Watch that video now to understand exactly where your case is headed, how to prepare accordingly. See you over there.